Buckle up for the second, number 2 episodes in already of Ghostfacers, Supernatural Rewatch Podcast. My name is Richard, and sitting shotgun, as always, is my brother in podcasting, Reed.
Hey.
This episode, we get sort of, it's almost like a bottle episode because they're mostly in a forest this whole time.
Yeah,
we get sort of...
It's that sort of agoraphobic bottle. Where
Yes,
it's like
exactly.
It's outside, but it's too close.
Yeah, exactly. You get more details about the brothers, about what's going on with their dad. You get the answer to what were those weird numbers in the previous episode. They make no sense.
And I think one of the best monsters the show's ever had.
But not one of your classic urban legends.
Not
You get
at
sort
all,
of
yeah.
the legends of urban legends is a B tier.
Yeah.
I think it gives a great credit to some First Nations lore and things like that. Lots of lore in this one, baby.
Oh, the lore. Mwah.
Oh, all right, let's get into it.
Ghostfacers! We face a ghost, when others will not, we're ghosts! Ghostfacers! Stay in the kitchen when the kitchen gets hot! Ghostfacers! We face a nightmare, we face a dread! Ghostfacers! We face a faceless, we face a dead!
Welcome to Ghostfacers. Today we're talking about episode number 2 from season 1, Wendigo.
That's right.
Aired on September 20th, 2005. Holy shit.
So long ago.
I know. It feels like another... it's over a decade ago, which is terrifying.
It's almost 2 decades ago.
That hurts my stomach. I've got a stomach ache thinking about that. The story is by Rob Milbauer and Terry Hugh Burton. The teleplay is by Eric Kripke. So obviously Kripke's all over this first season.
Well, yeah, this is his baby.
This is the second episode. TV Guide description says their father's trail leads Sam and Dean into the wilderness, where evidence of missing campers points to a Wendigo, a legendary creature made stronger by feeding on human flesh.
That's right. Yeah.
So you it wasn't that long ago you watched this episode. I mean, it's funny because you breezed through the last 10 seasons.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's only been like 2 months or 2.5 months, and I've watched the first 10 seasons.
Good Lord.
You know, thank you, coronavirus. I've been at home a lot.
This is the one I've watched probably the most amount of times because I rarely go back and watch the pilot episode very often.
I would say that this is one of my favorite just like random monster episodes.
Yeah.
Even to this day, I think this is one of my favorites. Also because it's like it's a cool kind of monster too.
Yeah.
That, at least as far as I've gone, they have not revisited.
No, it's true. They've revisited so many of their monsters.
So many come back in some form or like
but
a
never a
variation,
Wendigo.
but
Yeah,
not this.
That's
one,
really
which is
interesting.
Sort of interesting, but yeah. So I've watched it twice in like the last 2 months. This episode,
wow,
I really like it.
which is funny because
Not to jump to how I feel about it, but
No.
I really like it.
up until 2018. Kripke has been talking shit about this episode since it came out.
He doesn't like it.
He hated this episode.
What does he have like specific gripes with it? Was it just like hard to shoot? Or,
I think that
like, what
he
was it?
just thought that it was like I think I think just the sort of the like bad effects of the time period and things like that. Like I think that he couldn't get it to be the way that he wanted it visually to be.
I could
Because the monster is like they don't really show you it very much.
but I just think it's so effective.
I think so too.
There's one shot in this where I'd be like, yeah, that's the visual effects package that you had in 2005. But I could understand as a creator being like, I wish that looked better because that's the George Lucas thing,
Yeah.
right? But like, oh, what if there was like just a wampa walking in the background there? Like you could do that thing, but like as a viewer, like I know what 2005 looked like, and I know what TV in 2005 looked like. I'm fine with it.
Which is funny because so in 2018, Kripke
especially because in the previous episode we talked about the weird effect that they do for the woman in white.
Oh yeah,
at the end.
yeah.
He doesn't have a problem with that. He's got a problem with this episode. That makes no sense.
It's so funny. So in 2018, he tweeted, "I have something shocking, even sacrilegious to say. I watched Wendigo with my son for the first time in 10 years, and it wasn't bad at all. 2005 effects were lame, but it was scary. Plus, young Han Solo. I'm taking it off my shit list.
So it was on his shit list.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
He's come around on it, so that's good.
But it's one of my, it's like one of my favorite episodes. It's one that I've gone back to. Like we often will sort of skip when my wife and I rewatch the show. We'll skip the sort of pilot episode, and then we always go to Wendigo. It's the perfect sort of like, this is your real second, like, it's a classic second episode. It's like, this is where the show really starts. We had to get the pilot out there. I mean, the pilot doesn't even have its own name because it's not Woman in White. It's just pilot episode, right? Because it's just like hey, this is how we sell the show. And now the show's actually starting in this one. Yeah. If you need the backstory and all of the exposition, you can go to the previous one. It's like this podcast. Yeah. You want the intro? We got the intro episode for you, but now this is where the show really starts, right? So it's super interesting. I think that for me, it's just before we start talking about anything of it, really, I think that it's the one that sort of is like, okay, now this is how the show is prescriptive. This is how the show is going to be for the rest of the next few seasons.
It gives you a better impression of the dialogue and stuff too, because it's not laden with all of that pilot
exposition
stuff.
And stuff.
I mean, there is exposition. It's a show.
Yeah, but it's not.
It's not the pilot.
It's not trying to sell you on the concept of this show. Now, one of the things I want to start doing is talk a little bit about the music in this. Now, we can't listen to it unless you have the DVD, unfortunately. Yeah. But just some of the sort of big main songs that were played in this. One, you get Hot Blooded by Foreigner.
Oh, great song.
Down South Jukin by Leonard Skinner.
Right.
Fly By Night by Rush.
Yeah.
And one that I'm sure is
that the Canadian content thing? Because they film in Vancouver. They're like, get Russian there,
get that CanCon. And then Dave Matthews Band, Out of My Hands.
Yeah, that's the
2005 of this show, I think.
One of these things is not.
But it's also a thing about this first season that it's like mostly it's classic rock, but then every once in a while maybe it's the CW-ness of it, or like the time period, or the WB that at the time was like, you still got to put in like music of the time. So they always have like one sort of like Yarly rock kind of thing. Yeah. Which still speaks to you, I think.
Heal me. I'm hot sick.
Lonely. But
it does, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's incredible to think, because one of the biggest reasons that they use classic rock on this show, because it was cheap. Which is hilarious, because thinking back now, I'm like, you would think that these are classic songs, they would be expensive.
I mean, it depends on like what if you're playing like an original like master recording of like the White Album or something like that.
That's Hot Blooded by Foreigner. I would think that would be an expensive song, or you know what I mean? Like,
I know what you mean, but I think they're also they're so like ubiquitous. I mean, radio stations have been playing them forever, right?
But also, no other show does this. I think that's one of the other reasons why
But I will say, you like, for multiple reasons. A, because the rights were protected, and B, because they'd be too expensive. You are not going to hear there's not a ton of Rolling Stones.
No, that's true. Yeah.
You're not hearing Prince.
No.
You're not like, we're sticking to like Whitesnake and Foreigner and like,
maybe it's just for me, those are like, it's classic.
There's
like,
not even Aerosmith. You don't even hear Aerosmith on the show. But you know what I mean? If we're talking about this like era, they are navigating away from the expensive ones.
Yeah. I will even say that in the previous episode, the moment where they're like, oh, you got all the old bands, Metallica, Motorhead, I was like, those are old bands?
Well, I mean, yes.
I'm like, even back then, those were old bands?
I was going to say even older now. It's 2020 right now.
Those were old 15 years ago. It gave me a little bit of a stomach ache. But
that's very funny.
All right, well, but before we get into the actual episode, why don't we open up Dad's journal and learn about some of the real world lore of today's monsters?
Yeah, let's see what the lore says. We're talking about the Wendigo, or as they pronounce it in this episode, the Wendigo. There's actually a lot of different pronunciations, because this generally comes from like Algonquin.
You were stoked about this monster. Like, I remember because I got you to watch the first episode and you were like, meh. And then like a year or two later, we finally got you to watch the second episode and you were like, they go Wendigo first? Like,
which is sort of why I'm so disappointed they've never got back to it.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's so cool because it's from like First Nations lore. I think it's largely Algonquin oral myth, but because the Algonquin, that's a big sort of group. That's not one nation, right? There's various Cree, there's Ojibwe, there's all sorts of different nations that are in there. So they all have different pronunciations and slight variations on the legend as well. So alternate pronunciations include Wendigo, Witago, Windakuk, Witika, and then also these ones that don't sound similar at all, like Achin, Chenu, and Kewak. These are all various other alternate pronunciations, alternate words for what is essentially a Wendigo. Because it's an oral tradition, the first written example is in the 1600s. Because First Nations are every story is oral tradition. So the first written example is in the 1600s. Is recorded by a Jesuit missionary in the New World who's writing home to France and recounting a tale told to him. And it's interesting because in that, like, he clearly also believes it. Like that idea of like spirituality and monsters is not like it wasn't looked at with the cynicism of today, right? So essentially, what is a Wendigo? It's the broad strokes across all of the different versions are that it's a form of cannibal creature. It's greedy and sort of insatiable. There are two very different takes on what it looks like. One is that it's very thin and skeletal, like its bones are pushing out of its skin. And then other versions that I think are maybe largely Ojibwe, Cree, and even like Innu are that it grows in size the more it eats, and that it's this like hulking muscular thing.
Jeez.
For the show, we're talking more about the thin skeletal one, but
I think it's a bit creepier.
Very divergent versions of what it looks like. It's often, but not necessarily, described as having antlers or horns. It's supposed to be super strong, got crazy stamina. It's supposed to smell horrible, and it's got super speed. I think it's supposed to like move with the speed of the wind, like that sort of thing. In some versions, it can walk on water and doesn't sink in snow and stuff like that.
Oh my God, is it an elf?
Well, oh no.
It's a high elf.
It preys on the weak and socially disconnected. So this is an interesting piece. So I'll talk a little bit about like what a Wendigo, where Wendigo comes from, but I want to come back to that. So most versions, it's a human at one point, and then the spirit is corrupted by greed, or it's weakened by extreme hunger or cold. A Wendigo is essentially like a winter monster. You don't really. The Wendigo thing is tied to cold. Because it's those conditions of starvation and stuff like that. So it doesn't really, the legend doesn't really come up too much in summer contexts. So the oral traditions state that a Wendigo can, sometimes it can be killed by, like regular weapons. Sometimes it has to be like a specific ritual performed by like an elder, or by cutting out its icy heart and melting it in a fire.
Whoa.
So the idea, though, that like it is corrupted by greed and it's weakened by extreme cold and hunger, maybe it's isolated. That thing about being about cannibalism, especially in like a remote winter, things like that. The idea is the Wendigo is a perfect monster for a First Nations legend, because community is like that's cornerstone of those cultures, like to the point where like a lot of them didn't have a capital punishment in the community would be exile. As opposed to death, because to be taken out of your community, removed from your community, is this like horrible thing.
Worse than death.
It would also make sense that it developed as a legend, and that you would teach your kids like that is what you become if you aren't sharing cooperative part of your community, if you become greedy, if you put yourself first and kill, that idea of like, one of us had to die, I killed him and ate him so I could survive. That's selfish. That's greed. And you become a Wendigo. It turns you into a monster by doing that. So it's a really like sort of fascinating look as a monster, because monsters tell you about their communities or their cultures. And that's the coolest part about the Wendigo, I think, to me. There are instances or things called Wendigo psychosis where I've seen sort of contradictory notes on it, where some of it is that people believing that a Wendigo is out there and they go crazy.
Oh.
And other people, it's the going crazy and killing and eating people.
Jeez.
And it was used, and the term Wendigo psychosis was actually used, and then used way, way, way less in the 20th century. But for a while there, you will see that term pop up.
Well, it's one of the references they make at the beginning of the show, which is the Donner Party.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's sort of the big pieces of it. I mean, there are Wendigo in other pieces of pop culture, from comics to movies and things like that. I think often they go with the sort of antlery look because there's some like artist interpretations that almost make them take on like a sort of caribou kind of characteristic a little bit. Maybe just to fit with that sort of northern
Sweet tooth about a Wendigo.
yeah, maybe. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there were instances of people having like killed and eaten people like up around James Bay and stuff like Northern Ontario, and then it being called like that was a Wendigo, or that they would kill a person before they could fully become a Wendigo. Like,
yeah,
it was like a real thing that people were contending with here in the New World, was the idea of, now, not that the monster was real, but the idea of the cannibalism and the idea of like stopping a person before they become a Wendigo. Very, very real.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, why don't we jump into our discussion of the episode?
Let's do it.
Because I mean, this is your most like sort of like prescriptive, like classic supernatural sort of first season episode for sure. Which I love. I mean, you get your recap from
this is the first time we get the recap, but it's not the then now one. It's almost like it's still a trailer for the show.
Well, but yeah,
like
because
they haven't sold people on it.
Totally, yeah. This is one of the first sort of
two brothers, what they witnessed,
hot guys, hot show.
Yeah. I mean, really though, God.
I mean, hottest guys, hottest show.
That shot of Dean just going, Dad was on a hunting trip. Hasn't come back in a few days. Like,
that line, I mean, is you'll see that she'll come back. They still use that like as like a previously on sort of thing.
It's true,
like it's a thing. This show loves calling back to like the first episodes all the time. Still.
I will say that then now thing that we're kind of half doing here, but not fully, is. It seems stupid, but it's weirdly helpful because so much happens in the show and there's a lot of lore. So it's kind of nice when you go in and be like, oh, I should remember these things because they'll be useful here.
Also,
it's kind of helpful
because they eventually diverge into so many different storylines happening at once and so many different characters later on that it's important to sort of have your sort of key characters. Your like sort of key characters brought back and like the stories about them and sort of things like that. I think it's important. So
totally agree. Yeah.
So previously we obviously talked about
I mean, there's only one episode previously, so we're just catching up on all that happened up to and including Jessica dying, the way Sam's mother died, and
the
Sam
boys
saying like, I'm in.
Yeah, the boys are back together and they're gonna keep hunting monsters.
Did you have to stop yourself from
dad.
saying the boys are back in town?
Yes.
Yeah.
It just makes so much sense. So we start off in Colorado, in some very sort of remote area of Colorado in the woods,
which is not where the Algonquin people are. This is, and it does come up in the episode. They say this is way too far west.
Yes.
So they are even making good reference to the fact that like the writers like, I know we researched it, we know the Algonquins are
like this should be in the winter. If it should be with Algonquin, this thing's out from where it's not supposed to be, right? So I think that it's good. This is the thing that they like make those references. Another old piece of technology,
but also that the one guy in the tent, he's the main guy from Glee that like then like
really
suicide. Like
was that who that was?
Yeah. Like, what's his name in this? Gary. He's just like a friend that also the Wendigo gets. But yeah, he was the main guy from Glee.
I didn't even realize that. Yeah. That's really funny. Oh my God, it totally is. Yeah. That's hilarious. I didn't even...
I had that moment at 11:45 last night.
That's amazing. Yeah, so we get the episode starts with the... sorry, we're referencing the shows because we put it on while we're doing this. So
yes.
So the episode starts inside this remote campsite. These group of guys are sort of camping out. just having a fun camping trip in the middle of nowhere, and that's when we start getting some rustling in the woods, and
it's the classic one guy's got to go take a leak in the woods, like I bet the monster's gonna get him.
And the main sort of he's not a protagonist, but how would we describe our main brother here?
Oh, our main monster victim.
Yes, our main monster victim here. He his puka shell necklace also.
Yeah.
Did you ever have one of those?
No comment.
I 100% did.
I did.
I also lived at basically Abercrombie and American Eagle, so
yeah, that was a big
there was a time period for sure.
There's a lot of pop collars in my day.
Oh yeah, double pop collars even.
Well, yeah. How are you supposed to play Crash Into Me on acoustic guitar at the campfire if you don't have your collar popped?
See, that's a Dave Matthews bed even on this episode. But yeah, so he's using a sat phone to call his sister to give her an update on where they have been, because he promised that he would give that information as they sort of went through. And that's when you start getting the like classic, like outside of the tent, the flashes of shadows, classic horror movie trope there.
Yeah.
And you don't know where it's...
Because this thing moves fast. You're getting a lot of these like from like through the tent fabric.
Absolutely. I mean...
I said I thought last episode was a really solid horror episode. I think this one is up there too. Like, this is still one of my favorite just random monster episodes. You know, like as the show goes on, we start developing those bigger arcs and stuff like that. But as far as just like an episode about a monster with scary moments and sort of just shot as its own little contained piece, I think this is one of the best ones still.
What's great is that they've set it up in a way so that...
thank you for coming around, Kripke.
Yeah. It's funny, and one of the things that this also sets up, that in the first episode we didn't see the blood splatter, therefore
that's right,
person's not necessarily dead.
No blood splatter.
Yeah, that's
so someone is still alive.
So someone's still potentially alive. So we get to now Jessica died, so we're at her grave.
Yeah.
Sam's got the worst haircut I've ever seen in my entire life,
and clearly a borrowed suit.
Yeah, I love
which is sort of how a 22-year-old looks in a suit.
This is sort of your Sam Hockey hair phase, which we all went through.
I definitely went through.
Yeah, absolutely. And because now he's trying to be a little bit more formal, he's like combed it down in the front and put some product in it.
Comb the bangs straight forward. It's a funeral.
Yeah, have some self-respect.
But psych, it's not really a funeral or a grave visiting. It's just a dream.
No, this one is this is not a dream.
No, it is.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Watch. Wait for it. Here we go. And he goes to put the flowers down, and a hand grabs him. And he wakes up in the car.
I assume that he actually did go to her gravesite, but...
It was only just a dream.
It was just a dream. We used to read Word Up magazine. Biggie Smalls. Edit point. Now the guys are back in the car. We get the 3-member team, the Impala and the 2 brothers.
Yeah, you know, like the joke that like New York is a character. It's like the Impala is a character in this
so
show.
Much so that they like an episode in the far future, in a future season, they actually do an episode about the car being a character in the show. You haven't even gotten there yet. It's good. It's not a spoiler. It's fine. It's just it's a theming that they do for the episode. But anyways, we're back within the Impala, and we're going to Dad's point that he had set up.
Yeah, the coordinates from the previous episode, and the coordinates,
the confusing numbers.
Well, Sam's looking at the map, and he's like, "These coordinates are like roughly in
the middle of this woods."
Well, they're roughly in this like town in Colorado, but they're really nowhere.
Yeah, they're in the middle of the woods. Like, is this even right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that drunk when he wrote I'm a fucking said these kids somewhere won't bother me anymore.
Yeah, that's right. To Blackwater Ridge.
Yeah, I'll get him out of my hair for a few days. So they're headed to 35 111.
35 minus 111. As someone later in the episode also points out.
Oh yeah.
Lost Creek, Colorado.
This is also for our Supernatural mega fans. Another thing to track is we still got the original license plate, the Kansas license plate. We switch it in a few seasons, but to like CNK 1008 or something.
Wow. Is that nerdier than knowing NCC 1701?
No.
Okay.
No.
I'll be over here.
And I think that's wrong, but I know CNK is in the beginning. But anyways, so now we get the brothers trying to pretend that they're officials again, and they still haven't figured out that you got to dress for the part.
They actually pretend initially that they are students, like environmental studies
Yes,
students.
that's right.
And the guy's like, bullshit, you're here because that
kid died.
That kid, no, it's not even died.
Oh.
He says, you're here because that, like, this
Oh,
girl
yes.
keeps calling me, freaking out that her brother's not back. Her brother said he was going to be on a camping trip till the 24th. There's lots of time for him to be alive.
Yes.
Maybe. I'm not going to go investigate this.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Yeah, I got park ranger stuff to do.
Yeah.
He's like sitting with his morning coffee.
So they basically,
They're like, all right, yeah, we're trying to.
I love the attitude of this guy though, that someone is like, my brother checks in every day. He didn't check in. He's in the woods. And he's like, he said he'd be back on the 24th.
Yeah.
He's like, it's fine.
What do you think? Some Algonquin creature came all the way out here? That's ridiculous.
What, do you think it's the woods and there are bears or something?
Yeah.
Like, it's just such like a cavalier attitude for a park ranger.
You know, boys will be boys.
So at any rate, Sam and Dean get some info out of the park ranger, and basically they're going to go talk to the sister who's calling in because they want to find out, like, why, if the park ranger's not concerned, why is she concerned
Exactly.
that her brother hasn't checked?
So they go to the sister's house. What's interesting about this specific episode is there's basically only 3 sets in the entire episode. It's basically like the park rangers, the sister's house, and then they're in the woods for the rest of the episode.
Yeah. And then the mine.
Yeah, but I mean, it's still part of the woods, I would say. Technically.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
It's in the ground.
Fun fact here. So they come into the sister's house here. The sister explains that, like, their parents are gone. So it's just her and the brother that we saw previously. And then this younger brother that's in the house. The younger brother, Alden Ehrenreich, Solo.
What? That's who that is?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
He's so young.
Yeah, fun fact there.
Weird. I had no idea.
Yeah, I mean, now that it's in your head, you'll
Oh, yeah.
see it,
I totally see it now. Yeah. But he just looks like some dweeby kid in this.
He does, yeah. It's funny when you go, I mean, we're going back to 2005. You go back far enough and you see people whose careers have not taken off yet.
That's so funny. Oh, wow. Another piece of old technology. You get the, like, 4-inch thick computer screen that's mostly just like the outside of
even the camera that he's like using to send like pictures and messages to his sister when he was checking in, he like has to turn it around because it only has a camera on one side. Like,
so funny. I love that. So yeah, the sister does a great job. I think she's great casting in this. She's got a lot of sort of, like, she feels like the sister that's concerned, but she also feels like she's got a bit of badass in her.
Yep, and sort of this like maternal sort of thing going on too, because she's the one looking after her younger brother.
Great casting,
trying to keep this family together.
Great casting. I love this.
So basically, she says, like, listen, he has a satellite phone. He's got all this stuff. We stick together. Our parents are dead. Like, if he has not sent me a message, something has happened. Like, the park ranger should get fired.
Yeah, 100%. So after we leave the sister's house, we do another classic supernatural scene, which is we go to like some dingy bar.
Just like a fucking Roadhouse dive.
Still haven't gotten the introduction yet. We're still waiting for the introduction of food. That becomes a big piece of this show is food. But so far,
we're getting the aesthetic, right? Which is like, you know, like those sort of like
Roadhouse bars.
Yeah, Roadhouse bars. It's all like a wooden bar with like a neon Miller sign and stuff like that. Like,
it's like the old blues bars.
Yeah. I mean, there's a place like that in town, and
that's 100% where the hunters are going to hang out
at the KK.
Yeah. Glad it's only 2.
Yeah, and there's a place I used to go to in Stratford called the Dominion House that was like that. Justin Bieber's dad bottled a guy there.
There was a Dominion House in Windsor, where I'm from, and there was and it was just like that too.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Justin Bieber his dad did not buy that one.
Oh no, I didn't say Justin Bieber's dad bought it. He bottled a guy in the bar.
Bottled a guy?
He's a huge dirtbag.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I have heard that he's a total dirtbag.
So at any rate, they're in this bar and they're reading the paper, and it's like there's a lot of these
bear
things
attacks,
blaming things on bear attacks, and they're like, that doesn't sound right.
You know how a bear eats the heart out of a person? Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's like that. So they find this story about a bear attack, but the boy like survived. But it was a bear attack like in a house or in a cabin.
That's right. Yeah.
So they go to talk to him. He's now like an old man, and he basically at first he says, "You won't believe me," and they go like, "Try us."
Yeah.
And he says like, "It unlocked the door. A bear doesn't do that.
No.
It came in, right?"
Mm-hmm.
So what that scene does is it's telling them, A, definitely not a bear. B, it's a physical being. It's not a ghost. It's not moving through walls.
No.
And as Dean says, if it's if it's got
Corporeal.
if it's got a body, we can kill it. Yeah, Sam calls it corporeal, and Dean goes, "Ooh, college boy."
Yeah. And he goes, and what does that corporeal mean? It is like, it means you can kill it. And he's just like, all right, so we can kill it.
But we haven't clued in that it's a Wendigo yet. Again, because we are way too far west to be part of that oral tradition, part of that legend.
I can't remember at what point they say it in this episode, but this we get the first sort of I don't think they say it in the first episode, but we get the classic phrase that gets repeated for the rest of the series, which is like saving people, killing things, the family business.
Yeah, I think it might be near the end of this episode.
Yeah, I know that they say it in this episode for sure.
They definitely say it.
So we got to keep track whenever you hear that one, because that's basically like it should be on the family crest for the Winchesters.
That's right. Yeah. But basically, so this guy is talking about this thing. There's definitely not a bear that was a monster. He says, "I don't know why it left me alive." And then he opens his shirt and he says, "It left me with this." And it's this massive
scar,
massive 4 scars on him. And previously the sister had said, like, "I've hired someone that's going to take us out. We're going to look for my brother." And now Sam and Dean are like, "We can't let that happen."
No.
Like, they're not going after a bear. Like, no one is going to be prepared for this.
No, yeah.
They don't even know what it is. It could be a werewolf. It could be anything.
But they don't even know, yeah. So it's they got to save these people. They got to kill some things. It's the family business.
I am so there.
It's so funny to watch you be so now where I'm at.
I know.
Like, I've been waiting so long for you to meet me, and I'm like, yeah, fucking you get it.
Meet me at the crossroads.
You won't be lonely. So good. So now we get the boys are getting into the back of the Impala.
Yeah.
Like whenever they're ready to set off for the mission,
they grab a bunch of guns and shit and put it in a duffel.
Yeah, because they're going to go deep into the woods on an outfitting adventure, so they've got to have a duffel bag, leather jackets, and some jeans.
It comes up in like the next scene where they meet up with the sister, because they had introduced themselves to the sister as fellow park rangers.
Yes.
And then they show up and they're just like in regular like shoes and jeans and a jacket with a duffel bag, and Dean's got a bag of M&Ms. And then like,
because she goes,
the guy that she's hired has like a GPS and like a gun, and they all have big backpacks. They got hiking boots on, and they're like, "You're coming out like this?" He's like, "Yeah."
She's like, you didn't even bring food with you." He's like, "Yeah, I did." And he pulls out the bag of M&Ms.
Which I think, kind of like what we were saying last episode, is proof that like the impersonating law enforcement thing is relatively new for them.
They're
sure, not good at it yet.
They haven't figured out sort of that, like, the value in sort of playing the part.
Yeah.
So that they can sort of get access to people for longer and longer, because right away
they are bad cosplayers. Let's put it that way. Yeah,
absolutely. Dad just doesn't understand me. It's a future episode we can't reference. So
here's it happening right now.
Right away she references, like, this is what you dress like. You're clearly not prepared.
And this guy that she's hired, the character's name is Roy. He's one of
such good casting.
Like, he's clearly a skilled hunter and like kind of an outfitter, but he's also just a giant asshole. It's like, who are these dicks?
I'm the one who's hired to be the expert.
Charge. I'm the one with a penis.
Yes. Great casting. I've seen that guy in other things before. He always plays an asshole. It's very much the overconfident, like, alpha male.
Again, a strong episode of Day Players.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So now we get sort of after they set off for their adventure, we go back and we see that the brother's still alive. Remember, we didn't see the blood splatter, so somebody's still alive.
Yeah, it's the brother is alive, and Gary, the main guy from Glee.
Yes.
The main guy from Glee is about to bite it, but they're both still alive. They're somewhere deep and dark. We find out later they're in a mine. It's one of those things, maybe when they're driving into town and Sam's like, this is the middle of nowhere. He also says, like, it's just a bunch of abandoned silver mines.
Yes.
And, like, he's like, well, I bet that's handy information for us to have.
Very funny. And you get your first viewing of the monster.
I mean, just
a silhouette of it.
Just a little silhouette.
Yeah.
I guess it's because of the effects thing, but this episode does that. It's the
thing that makes good, like,
the reason
horror.
It's a horror trope is that effects are expensive and hard to pull off. So you show the monster as little as possible. And this episode, literally, you don't see the Wendigo in focus until like the last 7 minutes of the episode or something.
It's a classic Hitchcock thing.
Yeah.
This is a scene that really bugs me. So they're hiking through the forest, and the way to make the outfitter seem like he's capable is they make the guys look less capable, which I don't like, because the thing that they're supposed to have done is the boys are supposed to be sort of secretly the experts and are been trained to hunt, but yet Dean almost steps onto a bear trap. I kind of hate that scene because it doesn't feel like in character for them.
I know what you mean, but being distracted by the girl
is a
classic Dean thing, and being distracted by trying to out testosterone someone else is also a Dean thing. I could see him temporarily because he's shitting on the outfitter a bit before the bear trap thing. I could see that being the moment where he misses it, and it just happens to be there.
Yeah,
like if he was shitting on him earlier, Dean might have seen the bear trap.
Yeah.
I kind of can see it.
It just bugs me a little bit because I'm the thing that's great about these guys is that they're unassumingly actually experts and the sort of best of their breed.
I think the thing though too is they want to. You also, as a show, you want to set up that this guy actually does know what he's doing.
Which is why I guess why they did it.
Still is going to bite it hard.
Yeah. Which is why I totally get what they did. Yeah. I just think that it was probably the only sort of folly for me here. Is that I'm just like, I don't like when they make the guys it's when you make them look like sort of bumbling idiots outside of doing what they do.
Right.
I totally get it. But once they're sort of hunting, that's when they need to sort of be on their game.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I think this is where the guy checks his GPS and says 35 by minus 111.
Yes.
Just to reiterate where we are.
Yeah. We got to the point where their dad sent them, right? Yeah, we got Han Solo here. Oh, that's why he said a young Han Solo with Kripke in that tweet. Now it makes sense. Because in that tweet he says, and a young Han Solo. And I thought they were just referring to Dean being young because he's supposed to be Han Solo. But that actually is a young Han Solo. Okay. I get it now. See, I put the pieces together.
Oh, right. They hear someone call for help.
Yes.
And this is a piece from the lore that I didn't mention, but there are some accounts of a Wendigo being able to mimic and replicate sounds, especially human sounds, because they were
human
at one point. So that's definitely part of the real world legend of the Wendigo, although less talked about than the cannibalism, but technically part of it.
Yes. So our group of travelers here find.
Oh, sorry, they haven't heard the sound yet, but they found the campsite.
Yes.
The guy found the campsite. They've seen all the blood. All the tents are shredded. Obviously the guys are gone. So they don't know what's happening,
but they haven't found a body.
They haven't found a body. But they found tracks, and Dean says bodies were dragged, and then they're gone. They were dragged for a bit, and then it just stops. Which is creepy.
Yeah, you get the brothers with their mysterious look, like, what's going on here? Now things are getting interesting.
Yeah.
But
I think not too long after this, they do hear a "help me" sort of thing from the forest, and they run out to find it, and then nothing is there, and then Sam starts cluing in. Sam's the first one to start thinking.
Oh, look at that old tech. You got a classic BlackBerry.
Love that.
I had one of those.
Sam's the first one to start thinking.
Brick Breaker was great.
And then they run back to the site, and their bags have been stolen.
And that's not.
And that's when they're like, a bear doesn't do that.
No, because that's the thing. Another sort of classic trope of the show is that the guys are sort of. They're willing to jump on anything that seems supernatural, but they're also hard to convince that something is supernatural, which is great because one of
the job is you go somewhere where something weird might be happening.
Yeah.
You eliminate all of the non-weird things first, and then you figure out what the supernatural thing is, and then you kill it.
When after all plausible things are only the implausible can be true.
Yeah,
right?
that old Sherlock Holmes
Yes.
sort of axiom. Yeah.
One of the things that I think I like is that what that does is set, like, look, there's lots of shit that goes on. Not everything is supernatural, because they want you to feel like this could happen in your own world.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's not that like constantly supernatural shit's happening, because you would hear more about it.
Yeah.
But they sort of like are hard to be convinced that something is actually supernatural. Though every episode there's a supernatural thing, it doesn't mean that there's thousands of millions of things going on every day.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where, so when that happens and then the bags are gone, that's when Sam pulls Dean aside. They take out Dad's journal and he flips it open and he says like, Wendigo. And he goes, we're too far west for a Wendigo. But he's like, think about it. Mimics human voice.
Yeah.
Crazy good hunter. Super fast. You know, like, this is what we're dealing with. And Dean's like, oh, great. Well, everything that I brought can't kill a Wendigo.
Exactly. Nothing can kill a Wendigo. So,
and I think the show's version of the lore is that it's fire.
yeah.
Which sort of is riffing on that idea
The melting its heart.
melting its heart, because again, that idea of like the icy heart or the ice cold. Now obviously this episode doesn't take place in the winter, but they're still riffing.
They're playing fast and loose sort of with it. Yeah.
But they're riffing on the idea. You can see where the inspiration came from.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I love it. And you get still the hunter's still being a smart ass, and
Well, because Sam's like, we got to get out of these woods, and the hunter's like, yeah, okay.
yeah, like you're not getting out of here now.
And
now
then-
you're screwed.
Do they say outright at a certain point in this episode? They just say outright, "We're dealing with a Wendigo."
Well, he
And the
goes
hunter-
to say
and
it.
the hunter doesn't believe them.
He said, you guys are crazy.
Yeah.
You know you're crazy, right? This is a very funny one. Yeah, I think that's right what's happening right now. Yeah. And because he goes to say it, and that's when Dean stops him, and it's just like fucking.
But they do actually say it at some point.
Yeah.
Because Dean draws what he says are Anasazi symbols in the ground to try and keep the Wendigo away. Which, this is where it gets a little weird to me, because the Anasazi people are like, that's like the Pueblo and the Hopi. They're like from a different part.
Oh, really?
Entirely. So it's almost saying like all First Nations lore works against all First Nations lore, which I from a storytelling thing in the show, I could kind of get what the logic of it is, but it's weird that it's like we've made a point of saying this is an Algonquin thing. Why is it out here?
Yeah.
And then Dean is like, I'll use something from a totally different place entirely.
Yeah.
That'll work. It's a little odd.
It also doesn't really work, so it doesn't matter.
Well, it does. The Wendigo doesn't come in.
Oh, yeah.
It tries to draw them out again with the help me thing, and Roy goes after it and
That's
gets
right.
fucking eviscerated. Well, he shoots at it and then gets like eviscerated.
So funny.
So that's a weird sort of moment where the show's kind of lore building takes like a kind of sort of weird stumble to me. It's possible that in doing our show, I'm going to find more of those by like contrasting what the actual sort of legend is. But
For sure, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, nobody else is doing this sort of deep diving, and they need to they're pulling from as much real world as they can to make it feel real.
I just think it's funny that they didn't find, maybe it's because there's not like a good history of Algonquin symbols. There's not like a strong,
Potentially.
there's not a strong written history of that people. So maybe we need symbols from somewhere.
Yeah, that feels, but at least they're not saying it's the same language.
Yeah.
Which is good. I think that's important. At least they're addressing that it's not the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, so now they hear the voices and
Help me.
yes.
Help. That's my impression of the Wendigo.
It's a great Wendigo.
Help me.
Yeah, if anybody ever asks you to do a Wendigo impression, you
It
could
sounds
do that.
like an NPC, like in a video game, like when you go past an area and then you're supposed to do the side quest.
Yes.
He's like, "Hey," it's like that's what it kind of sounds like.
Hey, listen.
Hey, listen.
So yeah, the hunter, even though they're like, he's like, your fancy circles aren't going to do shit. I'm going out to get this thing.
Yeah.
These guys need my help. And I'm a hunter.
And Dean's got a torch, and then he's also made a Molotov, I think.
Yeah.
Because that's the best that he's got that could be like a weapon against the Wendigo.
Well, exactly, right? So they're like, well, he's dead. Like,
Yeah.
they're very much just like, we'll find his body later tomorrow.
Yeah, Roy's big time dead.
So we get he disappeared in the night. Now we're in the next morning. We're gonna, Sam's gonna look all sullen, and then they're gonna eventually go after her.
Yeah. Oh, he's thinking about his dead girlfriend.
Well, yeah, exactly. And his dead dad and his dead mom. And
Well, we don't know.
his dad's not dead
His
yet,
dad is
but-
missing.
Yes.
Um,
But he's feeling sad about everything. And because he's doing the Sam thing, which is being, introverted and sullen and like emotional. You can appreciate that.
what do you mean? I don't know what you're talking about.
No, not at all. But this is where, Dean starts trying to like take leadership. He's going to chat up the girl.
Classic Dean.
Classic Dean. And Sam's going to be like, well, okay, guys.
It's funny because even at the end of this episode, and this is such a thing in this show where like it's like a big hug or like a kiss on the cheek for Dean, and then and then as walking away, you're like, yeah, thanks, Sam. It's such like a classic thing for this show is that Dean is the one that forms a bond with someone. They're like, and also you, Sam.
Yeah, what I love is that like they're both very attractive guys, but like even the show's just like Dean's obviously the hot one.
It's for a show where Jared Padalecki is objectively hot.
Yeah.
And the show so
Treats him
often
like
tries
he's-
to make him unfuckable.
Yeah.
Like,
So funny. So now they're going to have to. It's the morning. It's time for them to continue with their journey. But they also need to know what the hell happened to this hunter guy.
yeah, and they do find his body in the woods, and he's just been killed. Dean has been saying, like, if it's a Wendigo like we think it is, your brother might still be alive because the Wendigo will bring, people back. Like to feast later, right?
Yeah.
Sort of idea.
Because that's where they finally talk about the Wendigo and they explain what it
Yeah.
is. Because they're going
right,
like,
yeah.
how do you know that he could still be alive? And he's like, you don't want me to tell you why.
So, but then they find the guy and he's just straight up dead. And they're like, but if it takes the thing back, like, why is he dead? And they're like, well, it's probably because he shot at it and they pissed it off.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they split up because they hear the Wendigo, and then Dean and the sister get captured by the Wendigo. So Sam and Alton Ehrenreich have to now. They have to find them and free them.
So they find the door to the abandoned mine and they're like, oh, this is probably where it is. They're looking for like a dark, secluded space.
Dark, secluded space.
An abandoned mine seems like it would be a great space to go and feast on people later.
Yeah. And actually, this mindset is pretty scary because they're in this hallway and they just have to like hide in the shadows against the wall. There's not actually like something to hide behind. They're just like tucked into the wall, and they see this sort of shadowy silhouette, this very sort of thin, like kind of stumbling and walking out of the.
They do a great job
Very,
making this
very
thing
scary.
terrifying. Yeah.
Very scary.
Like the cinematography in these first few episodes are so good.
They end up falling down like a chute, and then they find Gary, or not Gary. Gary's the one that's dead. They find whatever his name is, Danny or whatever the brother is.
Yeah.
They find Dean. They find the
Brother
sister.
victim. Yeah.
They're all there, and then they hear the Wendigo, and they're like, "Okay, we got to get out of here." And Dean, classic Dean, he sees that the Wendigo has taken all the packs. He finds flare guns. He goes, "These will work."
Yeah. That's got fire.
And then Dean basically goes like, "Sam, you get everyone out." And then Dean kind of runs off and goes, "Oh, I'm a tasty meal."
Yes.
Yeah, baby. And
Well,
he's like running through the thing trying to distract the Wendigo.
I love the scene also right before that because they look at each other and goes, "Are you thinking what I'm thinking?" And Sam goes, "Yeah, sure." And without even saying anything, Sam's like, "I'm gonna take these people," and Dean's like, "Woo! Dinner bells are ringing."
Yeah, there's some meat on these bones.
Yeah.
It's just like, just being...
Come on, you little bitch ass Wendigo, come get me.
I mean, essentially, he stops just short of saying
like
that.
it's just trying to like instigate and interrogate and like basically get it away from them and after him.
But of course, that's not what happens. The Wendigo manages to track Sam and the siblings.
Yeah.
Sam flubs an attempt to shoot it.
Yeah.
It's the first reveal of the Wendigo, the first time you see its face. And Sam misses with the flare and then runs. He's like, "Get out, get out, get out." And they end up at a dead end. And Sam's putting himself in front of the Wendigo. And it's like classic setup.
It's a heroic
And then
sort
right
of
before the Wendigo
self-sacrifice.
kind of gets them, because we get a lot of pretty good shots of the Wendigo like coming around a corner and seeing them and roaring and stuff like that. And then Dean shows up And I don't know what he says. Like, he says some version.
Yippee-ki-yay.
Some version of like a thing like that. And the Wendigo turns around, he shoots it with the flare gun. And that is where you get like a real 2005 sort of visual effects package fire thing happen. And the Wendigo completely burns up and is destroyed.
It's your classic, like fire effects from back then for a TV show.
But
like
I gotta say, this Wendigo, like, I don't think this looks that bad.
No, I don't think
like,
so either.
Especially
it's of
for
its
the
time
era.
period, but like, it's not that bad. Like,
I've
seen worse things on DS9.
I will say about the design of this Wendigo, it's got sort of like goblin ears, but no horns or antlers, which is the less common, I think, version of visually of what a Wendigo looks
I think it makes like,
but it is the skeletal thing, and it does sort of work with being previously human.
That's what I mean. I think from like a sciencey sort of mindset, it makes a bit more sense.
Yes,
to
if
me.
you were going to if you're going to like apply some sort of like genetic mutation sort of thing to it, it makes more sense that it's just this sort of tall, strong, vaguely human thing than also being kind of caribou-ish or something like that.
So now we get our classic Dean had a relationship with this girl, and
she says,
I gotta hit the road, sweetheart.
Well, she says something like, she's like, it's all done now. And Dean goes, and she goes, are you going to cheapen this moment? He goes, yeah.
That's what you do with moments. You cheapen them.
Yeah.
Very funny.
And she says, I hope you find your dad. And she goes, yeah, thanks, Sam.
Bye, buddy. Hope you find your dad.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And then it's just Sam and Dean. This is a classic.
Sam got cold waters poured all over him. Dean's feeling great.
This is a classic sort of end of an episode thing. It was like sitting on the car,
the ambulance
on or in the car,
yeah,
and being like, "Yep, we did it."
Yep, ambulance. No one will ever know, and like ambulances are taking away all of the like people,
and maybe this is. Or it might have been earlier, but essentially they're like, why would Dad send us here? And Dean is like, maybe he's off doing something else. He wants us to, save people, hunt things, the family business. We do that. So they've sort of come to the conclusion that the breadcrumbs they've been following aren't to find John, but they're to do this work while John is doing something else. Yeah,
and Sam's like, oh, fine, I'll do it, but you gotta let me drive.
Yes, yeah.
Which is very, very funny. It's his sort of compromise.
Yeah. So, I mean, we didn't touch on it while we were talking about it, but basically because of that thing with the Wendigo being previously human, it was likely one of these miners.
Yes.
Tough winter, blah, 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 turns to cannibalism. And the more you do it, the more monstrous you become. So that's why it was making its home in the mine. Yeah. Wendigo. This is episode 2.
That's right.
Sort of a summation, closing thoughts, and a review out of 5 Wendigos.
Why don't you go first? I did the last one.
Sure. So things that I love about this episode. Firstly, that it's the second episode in, and I think they deliberately went for a monster that is not like your classic subset, vampire, werewolf,
which
zombie.
is a bold move, I think, for your second episode,
it's not
because
a mummy.
The entire like premise of the show is like urban legends, and the next one they do is like a far deep cut one.
And I feel like it's all. I don't know if this is what they were doing or not, but it feels like it's almost to lend credibility to its writing staff, which is saying like, we are going to find some cool supernatural legends and we're going to bring them into this show. And to prove it to you, we have gone and done research into this First Nations legend. And as we know, especially in the States, but also especially up in Canada, people just don't give a shit about the First Nations people. So the fact that they like, even if it's to exploit their oral traditions for a TV show, it's the fact that they paid any attention to it at all is kind of neat.
Definitely.
And it's something different. I think if the first 5 episodes were like zombie, mummy, where I'd be like, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
But when you're starting to bring in, like, we did A Woman in White, that's its cool thing. Then we do Wendigo. I was like, okay, we're going to see like monsters, like of all varieties from different cultures. Even just 2 episodes in, I'm ready to see stuff from like Hindu culture.
Yeah.
I'm ready to see stuff from, like Shinto beliefs. I'm ready for all of that because they've sort of set me up to,
which is great. And they sort of like they dole out the like top 10 like urban legends like sparsely throughout the seasons, which is impressive because it's like
they're
you
good
could
about it.
You could have jam-packed it all the first season and then not know where to go.
I like that. I think that the monster design is good in this, and the way that they shoot it to keep it sort of out of frame until the end, I think it looks good. Even the music video fire effect at the end, I don't think is bad. Like this is, and just in general, because you've got the woods should feel like this big open space, but it's so close with the trees. Like, where do you run? And then you got this mine. It's a very claustrophobic sort of classic horror thing.
Yeah.
I love it. This is such a good standalone episode. It's a great little piece of horror. Cool monster, good Sam and Dean stuff. I'm going to give this one 5 Wendigos.
5?
This is a 5 Wendigos.
Full 5.
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just sort of building off of what you said, I think for me, this is sort of my, it tells you exactly what you're going to get in this first season. It sort of sets up all of the sort of, template for your monster of the week. It follows all the rules. You start with the sort of attack, then you go to the brothers. They have to figure out what's going on. They do their sort of investigations. They pretend to be somebody else, and then they go on the hunt. So for me, it's like this is sort of, if you showed somebody this, they can understand what the rest of the show is about. You get a little bit of it reminds me of like an X-Files episode. It's sort of the supernatural X-Files-y, but like a little bit more rough and tumble. It's your rock and roll X-Files.
It is, yes. Rock and roll X-Files.
So for me, it's one that these first few episodes are the ones that stick that clearly in my mind when I think about this show, especially in its sort of early beginnings. The brothers are you're really finding out sort of the characters. They're starting to fall into who their sort of character types are,
right?
As like separate entities. You get sort of the Dean's like deep inside of his sort of Han Solo, smart alecky sort of charmer, while also like loving his car, his leather jacket, eating food. We get M&Ms. So I mean, even though we didn't get the full food effect, Dean's eating, which is a big sort of component of what this show becomes, is that Dean loves to eat and loves food.
Oh, Dean loves his food.
Yeah. So the monster is genuinely scary.
I think so.
You get your sort of nod to Hitchcock with the like showing less is more, and it's scarier to not know than it is to actually see something.
And again, it's like using the constraints of your production to their advantage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, it's just not cost effective to have the monster on screen all the time.
Totally.
It's way scarier when you don't anyway.
And as somebody who lives basically like in the type of area that they were hanging out in this, like in the forest,
like a boreal forest.
Yes, it invokes some easy scare tactics for me. I think.
I mean, even just the thing that they dismiss, the bear attack thing, is like a real thing to contend
There was a bear
with.
in my neighborhood that we're in right now, like 2 days ago. Like,
I saw a bear last week.
Yeah, like they're all easily scareable things for me. So it's an episode that I always go back to, and it is one that I'm always like, I'm going to pay attention, though I know all the beats that happen with it. I think the casting was really good. We get young Han Solo, which is hilarious considering that we have a archetype of Han Solo on the show.
It is very funny.
That's really interesting.
Who knows? Maybe that's what inspired him.
Oh my god, maybe. Who knows? But yeah, I love this episode. I think I'm going to give it a 4.5 Wendigos. For this one,
is that because of the Dean not being good at his job thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. One little knockoff of it, but you got all of the pieces that you need to for this. They set up sort of they answer the questions that you might want to, which is sort of. Right. Well, like no one would take these guys seriously,
right? And
they don't. And I think those are the things. All the stuff that sort of is unbelievable. They sort of find a way to explain in every episode, and they will explain long term on the show. So there's all the sort of like immediate questions they're answering in these first few episodes, and then so later on you won't have to. So when people are when you get like 2 seasons down the line and you're going, well, how people aren't going to believe this? Well, they don't, and they've answered that, and they always have an answer for it.
Right.
And they know how to sort of like handle these things, or they find a way to work around them. So that's sort of it's sort of laying down the pavement for what the show will become, and sort of solidifying why you need to keep watching it. I'm wondering from you, like this was the one that sort of helped keep you on the show, right? Because
this was the one that hooked me,
right? Like
like I said, the first time I watched the pilot,
a little clunky.
I think I said it last episode. I the first time I watched the pilot, I was like, fine, not bad, but like fine.
Yeah,
don't get the hype. And then I watched this one, and I was like, oh damn! And I immediately watched another one after, because I was like, okay, I get it. And yeah, I think next week's episode is also
a banger, also
a very, very strong one. Like, I mean, this is what you want for your show. You want to come out strong with a bunch of good episodes right up top, get people in. You know, they're not all going to be bangers. That's just how TV works. So you need to at least put the strong ones first, right?
Yeah.
And this one certainly fits that bill. I would say that Wendigo is the reason I kept watching.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, that's it for this week's episode. We would love to hear what you think about this episode. Yeah. So make sure you follow us on all of our social media accounts, right. Which we haven't set up yet, but we will by the time this airs.
Yeah, you can find them.
Yeah. Look for it. Just look up Ghost Faces. You'll figure it out. But also, if you have a note about this episode, maybe something we missed, or a future episode, something you don't want to make sure that we don't miss, make sure that you reach out to us on our email.
ghostfacerspodcast@gmail.com.
That's right. And that's it. So say goodbye, bitch.
Jerk.
This was a Brain Freeze podcast.